Well, good morning, Rotary District 7770, and welcome to Conversations with Rotary Action People for Monday, June 14th, 2021. My name is Donald Hovis, your CWRAP host, and I'm from the Chicora Rotary Club in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Thanks for being here today. We're pleased to have Anna Rushton as our speaker. I'll introduce her in just a moment after a few announcements, but I do want to say, those of you on here, thank you for being here. In the chat box, tell me your Rotary Club, what you're looking forward to over the summer, and then what is today? I know today is a Monday. I know today is June 14th, but what is today? Anybody know? All right. Introducing your public image chair from the 5 Points Rotary Club in Columbia, Mary Gass. Mary, thanks for setting up our speaker today and all of our speakers on this wonderful program. I wonder how many episodes we've actually done now. I wish we could go back and count, but I know it's been a lot, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's been a lot of fun because of you. So thank you again. All right. So Anna Rushton is our speaker today. She is the outreach coordinator of the Securities Division of the Office of the South Carolina Attorney General in Columbia. So Anna, good morning. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me today. I really appreciate the invitation. Today, we are going to be talking about protecting your money from investment fraud. And again, I'm with the Attorney General's office. I work in the Securities Division, and I've been with the division for 6 years already, so the time has flown by. My function is the outreach coordinator, and I'll explain a little bit more about that here in just a few slides. But let me go ahead and share my screen.
Good. I see it,
Okay.
Anna.
All set? Okay. Perfect. Well, before I get started, I have a few disclaimers. My first disclaimer is I'm not an attorney, but I do work with several attorneys in the Attorney General's office, so we can't get away through a presentation without a good disclaimer. So first of all, if you hear any opinions from me today, they are not necessarily the opinions of the Attorney General or the Attorney General's office or the state of South Carolina. And also, this presentation should not be construed as legal advice or an endorsement of any products or services. Okay, so most places I go and speak, most people have not heard of the Securities Division or who we are. So let me just start by explaining a little bit about our function here at the Attorney General's office. So we are a subdivision of the Attorney General's office, and a lot of people don't know, but Alan Wilson, our Attorney General, has an additional title. So not only is he the Chief Legal Officer and the Chief Prosecutor, but he is also the State Securities Commissioner. So we have within our office the Securities Division. It's a little different in each state. There's, I think, about 5 states that are set up like we are, where the Securities Division falls under the Attorney General's office. A lot of times it's under the Secretary of State's office or maybe the Consumer Affairs office. But in each state, you will find a Securities Division. So our function basically is protecting South Carolina investors. And we're just simply explained, we are set up into kind of 3 different sections. We have registration, we have enforcement, and we have outreach and education. So those are kind of the 3 arms of our division. So with registration, we register or license the professionals who are dealing in securities. So say like your stockbrokers, your investment advisors, by law have to be registered with our office. So you may have heard of the SEC or the Securities and Exchange Commission. We are the state level SEC, basically. So by law, they have to be registered and licensed with us. And I'll come back to that a little later because that is such an important function that I like for all South Carolinians to know and understand how it's such a great resource for them. So I'll come back to that later. Second, we have enforcement. In enforcement, we have attorneys, we have investigators who are here to investigate any complaints that come into the office. So for example, if you have, say if you have an investment advisor who is lying, cheating, or stealing in some way, that's something we would want to know about and investigate. Also, if there is someone out there who is offering securities or investments without being registered, then that's also something we want to know about. And I'm going to give you some examples of a few cases that we've handled that are examples of unregistered people out there dealing in securities and how dangerous that can be. And last but not least, we have education and outreach, which is what I do. We've just seen so many sad stories. I could go on all day about them, but just, you know, for example, we've seen retired people who have trusted the wrong person, handed over their life savings to someone who should not be trusted, and they never saw that money again because they told them, oh, I'm going to invest this money in this, and you're going to make all these fabulous returns. Trust me, you know, this is going to be great. And then the money is spent on something else, not the investments. And the money is basically stolen. And at that point, it's very difficult for us to get the money back. Once it's gone, generally the money's gone. So we've seen people lose houses. We've seen people get kicked out of nursing homes, lose their entire life savings, which is why it's so important for us to get out there, to try and be as proactive as possible, get the educational information out there, let people know about the red flags in order to help them make more educational decisions regarding their money. So that's a little bit about our office and what we do. And of course, I'll have our contact information at the end, so you all hopefully can spread the word and use this as a resource. So why are we so concerned about fraud in the first place? Besides the story I just told you about, the sad stories we see every day. Just in general, in the United States, here are some statistics. So they think about maybe 40 to 50 billion or so is lost to fraud each year. And of course, that's not just investment fraud, that's kind of the piece of pie that we deal with, but that's all types of fraud, but that's a lot of money. They think about 17% of the adult population falls victim to fraud within any given year. And it's important to mention that these numbers are probably a lot higher because so often this crime goes unreported because people, you know, a lot of different reasons, but a lot of times people are embarrassed, you know, that we've heard so many people say to us, oh, how could I have been so stupid? Oh, I should have known. And they'll just beat themselves up and blame themselves. And a lot of times they're just embarrassed to report it. A lot of times people just don't know how or where to report it, or they think, oh, if I go through all this and report it, nothing's going to happen anyway. So we always encourage people to report. Also, they think about with the older population, which is 65 and up considered here, that the average loss is about 34,000 per individual. And with investment fraud, those losses are a lot higher. And it's also worth mentioning that not just older people are the biggest victims to this, but they're definitely victims because they're out there targeting the older population because they've had, you know, time to build up their nest eggs. But anyone of any age with any amount of money is definitely a potential victim for this type of fraud. We've had people of all ages that we've worked with as victims in our office. So here's the first story I wanted to share with you. And some of you may remember or may have heard of this case before because it was one of our largest cases that we've handled here in our office. But this was the Ron Wilson, and his company was called Atlantic Bullion and Coin. So he dealt in, or was supposed to deal in silver bullion, like silver bars. And so this is an older case, but I still tell the story because it was just such a large case that affected so many people. It was all over the headlines. It actually even featured this story. I don't know if any of you watch American Greed. You know that on American Greed on TV. This was actually a story on American Greed, and Alan Wilson was interviewed, and we have the recording here that I've gone back and watched a few times. But anyhow, Ron Wilson was offering silver bullion and coin, and he was promising to investors, and this is back in around 2008. You probably remember how the stock market was crashing around that time. And so a lot of times when the stock market is going down is when silver and gold tend to go up. So there was definitely truths to his story. So he was soliciting investors to invest in the silver bullion and coin. And as you see here, he was able to get 800 investors here in South Carolina, and he collected about $59 million of investors' money. And he told them that he was going to store the silver bullion up in Delaware. It's going to be very safe in a depository up in Delaware, and just watch your money grow. And so he would send out statements to his investors so they could get their statement in the mail, like we all do. We look at our statements. Oh, look, I put in this much money, and look, it says my money is growing. This is awesome. It's just what he promised. And when in actuality, we had a complaint come into our office, and it was somebody who was looking at their statement, something wasn't adding up. And so it was enough information for us to go ahead and open up a case, which we did. And one of the first things that our investigators did was call that depository up in Delaware. They call up to Delaware, and they said, Ronnie who? We've never heard of this individual. There's no silver here. There was no silver. It was all made up. So he was not investing the money in silver bullion and coin. He was actually spending the money on himself. He had a big solar farm up in the upstate. I think he was around the Easley area. He had very exotic farm animals on this farm. He was a big collector of all types of items. I think he collected like Civil War memorabilia, had a very nice home. All of this mostly with investor money. The way he was able to keep this going, and pay people returns was to keep recruiting new investors. So as you can see, this has turned out to be a Ponzi scheme, basically. And this went on, as you can see, more than a decade. You may remember the Bernie Madoff headlines back around this time. That was the largest Ponzi scheme in history. That was a $65 billion Ponzi scheme. So this is kind of our big South Carolina version of a Ponzi scheme. And so what we were able to do was put him in a prison for 20 years. Ironically enough, he went to the same prison as Bernie Madoff, so he is still there. And they were able to go and these are actual pictures of some of his belongings that he purchased with investor money. So you can see there, they had an estate sale where they were able to sell off some of his assets and get some money back for investors, but it was, I don't even know if it was 50 cents on the dollar, which is pretty good in these cases. And it's horrible that these investors lost so much money. But a lot of times, these con artists do not even have any real assets. They rent a car, they rent a house, they rent an apartment, they spend the money, they gamble, the money's gone, there's nothing. But in this case, they were actually able to get some of the money, some of the principal back for these investors. And there he is. That's Ronnie Wilson. I think that's there's this mugshot there, as you can see. Another large case that was also around this time frame was the 3 Hebrew boys. And this was more of they were located here in Columbia. This is an $80 million Ponzi scheme, which affected 7,000 investors throughout North and South Carolina mainly. And so their pitch to investors was, hey, we're investing in the foreign exchange trading, which is a real thing. However, they were just telling people that they have this special trading platform and This affected people with some people that had very little money to give. They're like, well, if you can give us $500 here, $800 there. They were making big promises saying, oh, you're in debt. Oh, just give us, a couple $100 here, a couple $100 there. We'll promise we'll have you out of debt in a year, or we'll have your mortgage paid off, just making all these promises. So this affected people with, from that had a lot of money to very little money and all in between. They really targeted military, where they would go in and kind of infiltrate the system and go to churches and military groups. So that's affinity fraud, when you kind of target these trusted groups of people. And once you're able to get a few of the members from these tight-knit groups, the word of mouth thing spreads like wildfire. So they were having like these private meetings where they were saying no law enforcement is allowed in. They used to have to make them sign these non-disclosure forms saying they wouldn't tell other people what happened in this meeting. But anyhow, they only spent about $1 out of every $10,000 on anything that was actually invested. So where did the rest of the money go, you may be wondering? It went to the three Hebrew boys. It's what they called themselves. They purchased very expensive cars. They had condos in Atlanta. They had like box seats at football games. They even had their own private jet. So people from the outside looking in, like, wow, these guys, they must be successful investors because look at all they have. They have a private jet. So, from the outside looking in, people thought, wow, well, I want to invest with them. I want to have what they have. They must be successful. But they didn't know that only $1 out of every 10,000 was actually being invested. Everything else was going to their fancy lifestyle. And here they are, and they actually were sentenced to around 28 years in prison. So these two case stories that we just discussed are actually, as I mentioned, examples of Ponzi schemes. And they're a lot more common here in our area than you would think. So it's definitely something to be aware of. And the definition of a Ponzi scheme, I mean, everybody's pretty much heard of Ponzi scheme, but a lot of people don't know exactly what they really mean. So a Ponzi scheme is basically a scheme wherein early investors are paid money using the money from the later investors that come in, or they're paid returns using their own money. They just don't realize it. All they know is they're getting these high returns that they were promised. They don't really know that the money is just kind of being pushed around in circles. So the money's coming in from new investors. They're taking that money. They're giving the promised return to those early investors. They can kind of keep it going as long as they can keep recruiting more people in, because that's the flow of money. The money is not coming from anything legitimate. They could say whatever they want to say. They could say, oh yeah, we have this great foreign exchange trading program, or they can make up, hey, we're gonna, build this wonderful water park over here, and it's gonna be great, or we're gonna build this private school. Like, we've heard so many different things, but it's all just basically made up. So they just have to be really good talkers. They have to be people who can build trust with other people, and they have to hit the groups of people that are gonna trust them and therefore turn around and tell their friends about it. So they recruit people generally by word of mouth. Also, a red flag to look out for is they're oftentimes going to tell you, you can make these really great profits, but it's very little risk. The risk is very small. There is no risk. This investment is guaranteed. So anybody that knows about the investing world knows that no investment is ever guaranteed. You're never guaranteed, absolutely 100% guaranteed to make any returns. So if somebody's telling you that it's 100% guaranteed, then that's a major red flag. Just run the other way. Also, Ronnie Wilson or the three Hebrew boys were never even registered with our office. They were not registered to even be selling securities. So like I said, the early returns, people get really excited because they're like, wow, I just made you know, a 30% return or something crazy like that. And just like they promised, but they don't realize where that money is really coming from. But it does help with word of mouth because people say, look, I've got my money in my hand. Like, you can do this too. Call this person. And so the word of mouth thing, it just spreads like wildfire. And as I mentioned, generally, most of the time, they are not registered with our office. And the scary part about it is by the time we get the complaint, generally the money is gone, and it's very, very difficult to get that money back. So here are the main red flags to be aware of. If you're interested in investing, or if you have a friend or family member, these are really good red flags just to file away somewhere and to know about. And just for the sake of time, I don't want to go through each and every one of them, but I will highlight number 1 and number 2, the promises of high profits, coupled with the claims of low or no risk at all. So if somebody's saying, like I said, you can get these really high profits, but there's no risk at all, that's a combination that does not exist. As we know, when you have really high risk, you have a high, a potential of high profits, but that risk is also high. But you just don't see this combination here. Also, if the resistance to questions, that's a big one. I remember reading about Bernie Madoff, and he would say to people, if they're asking me too many questions, then I just shut them down. I don't even work with those people that are going to ask too many questions. So if somebody is resisting your questions, is not patient enough to explain to you simply about the investment program, then that's always a red flag. You want somebody who is going to be patient with you and answer your questions, answer them clearly, not talk around in circles, just good answers to your questions. And I can't stress enough, the registration of securities is so important. Like I said, a lot of investors with the Ronnie Wilson case and the 3 Hebrew Boy case and a lot of other cases that we have here in our office, had investors known, it's certainly not their fault. They just didn't know that these people have to be registered in order to be out there dealing in securities like this. So a great first step is just to call our office, and it's completely free. It doesn't take a lot of time, just to find out if the individual is registered before handing over your money. Because if you find out that they're not registered and they're not exempt for some reason, then that's a giant red flag, and that's where you should say, I don't think I'm going to be dealing with this person. And then take it a step further. We can actually not only tell you if they're registered or not registered, but if they are registered, we have a lot of really good background information on these individuals. For example, have they had any complaints during their time in the securities industry? What were the complaints about? Were they resolved? We can tell you how long they have worked at each firm. Have they worked, in the same firm for 20 years? Or have they worked at 20 different firms in 2 years? So things like that could really kind of give you information to make a more educated decision about the person that you're going to trust with your money. So definitely call us. Also, I'll provide our website. I'll provide our phone number where you can call us and check it out with us and get that information, because like I said, it's free and it doesn't take a lot of time at all to do this research. And then also, if you're looking for questions to ask to interview your next investment advisor, we have a list of really good questions that you can ask them and interview them and find out about this person and find out if they're the right person for you and trustworthy. Another really good tool that you can use as an alternative to calling our office is this free internet tool. It's offered through FINRA, and it's called Broker Check. And there's a new law where all of the investment advisor websites have to have a link to Broker Check. So if you have someone currently that you're using, you can go to their website, and then you should see the little, somewhere on their website, the little Broker Check thing, or you can just Google Broker Check, and something like this is going to pop up, and it's very easy to use. It just gives you this little information bar here where you type in the individual's name and their firm and their location. Or if you just happen to have their CRD number, which a lot of times it's on their business card, you can just type that CRD number into that box and then hit check. And it'll tell you, it'll say this person is registered, or if you don't see the person, maybe there's a lot of John Browns, and so you kind of have to get their name very specific if they have a very common name. But it'll also tell you some of that background information, like their complaints and things like that. It's not as detailed as you would get calling us, but it's a really, really good start, and it's a really good tool, and it's free, and it's confidential. They don't know that you're searching them or asking these questions. So here is our contact information, and if you do have questions or want to find out about the registration status of an investment advisor, call our number 734-9916, or you can file a complaint online just by going to our website at www.scag.gov. And here is my contact information, the SEC outreach at scag.gov is my email address, and that's our location there. And the 734-9916 is our main phone number. So do not hesitate to reach out and call us if you have questions about anything. But the main thing to remember is, don't be a victim. It's okay to slow down. It's okay to take your time. Definitely do your research. You can get on Google and type in the person and maybe type fraud beside the person's name. Do your Google research. Ask good questions. Interview your investment advisor. Find out if they're registered, and call our office. And we have a lot of good resources that I can email out. Just really good educational resources. Good questions to ask, all of that information. I'm happy to hear from anyone in our state or out of state that has these questions, or if you come across something that looks like financial exploitation, say, I don't know if this is investment fraud, but it looks like something else. I have a lot of people contact me saying, I'm just not sure where to report this. Can you help me? And so I do my best to help people get them to the right agency, because it can get so confusing with all the different places to report, whether it's law enforcement or consumer affairs or the post office for mail fraud. There's just a lot of different places. So it does get confusing, but certainly use this for a resource. And I really appreciate your time today, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Anna. Greatly appreciate it. Really interesting information. I do have a couple questions. Get ready to come your way.
Okay.
So this is Ron. This question is regarding Ron Wilson. Was he a professor at Charleston Southern University that you know of?
Oh, Ron Wilson was not the professor, but I know the case that you're speaking of. The name is slipping me at this point, and I know it will come to me as soon as I log off. But it was a similar case to Ron Wilson. There was a professor in Charleston who we had a really big case with, and it turned out to be, he was a very trusted individual there in that Charleston area. And I can't remember the amount of money that was lost, but it was one of our bigger cases. And it turned out to be, I believe, a Ponzi scheme as well. So it's very similar to that Ronnie Wilson case. And that name escapes me at this moment. I'm sorry.
Okay, the next one is regarding the Hebrew boys. Is there a description of the type of person who gets involved in this type of scheme? What is being done to educate the public in general on these types of schemes?
Good question. We have a lot of different profiles. We've had, that's tough to say there's one particular type of person, because we've had people all the way from, younger people that don't know a lot about, financial issues. Say for example, a military person who is, traveling or overseas. They don't have time to deal, to ask these questions or learn about, the investment advisors. They just might be more quick to take a word of mouth referral from someone without checking it out. Which is what happened with with the 3 Hebrew boys. Then we've had CEOs of companies. We've had a CEO of a Fortune 500 company that was taken for a lot of money in an investment fraud. Very smart people. And people, like I said, with lots of money to not as much money. I mean, it's all across the board. So one of our big initiatives is, because we have had different cases involving military and service members. I go down to Paris Island on a regular basis, and I'm involved with their financial training. I've been to Fort Jackson several times. I'm trying to work out some different other educational things with the National Guard. So we really, really try to get out there to the military, to the service members of South Carolina. That's a huge initiative. Also, we get out to the older population quite often. I do a lot of retirement communities, independent living retirement communities, where they are still in charge of their own money, to help them with, learn the red flags. Here's what to look out for. I've been to even a school before of middle schoolers, because I think financial education is so important for the young ones too. They were doing the stock market game, and they were actually very savvy. And I spoke with middle schoolers about, investment fraud and what to look out for. So it's all across the board. We try to get out to all different types of groups, especially the ones that are the most vulnerable, I think.
And we did have a comment in there about someone who had an accountant that almost took us for a lot of money. We trusted him, had no reason not to. Something didn't feel right, so they did get their money back. He did serve prison time. Okay, so there was a Georgia Congressman, Bo Ginn, who did something like this for years, became rich, got caught, put in prison in South Carolina. So people like that, maybe crooks also, but okay, that's not a question, okay. Somebody did say, great to know about broker check. Here we go. It seems like a Ponzi scheme is doomed to failure. Is the criminal ever successful?
Well, no. It depends on how good of a salesperson they are, and how good they are getting people to trust them and getting new people to recruit in. But as we all know, the world's population is finite. You're eventually going to run out of those new investors, and you have to have the new investors coming in to keep it going. They're only as successful as long as they can keep that money flow going. But it's going to come to an end, whether it's a year from now, 5 years from now, or 10 years from now. It'll eventually come to an end, and they will not be successful.
And someone might have given you information in the chat. Is it Al Parrish? Is that the one in Charleston?
Yes, thank you. Al Parrish, exactly. Yes, Al Parrish was the one in Charleston.
Awesome. Last call for questions, folks. Last call. Give them about 30 seconds, see if we get anything. But Anna, we do appreciate you joining us.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed being here today and seeing all of you.
Hopefully you folks on here at least learned something new today. I know I did. So not seeing any questions, though. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you all so much.
All right. For those on here, next Monday, Mr. Walter Hughes will be with us talking about water. And then our final CWRAP of the year on the 28th will be with District Governor Pauline, putting a wrap on her year with us on CWRAP. And then the week after that, the 5th, there is no CWRAP because that's the day after 4th of July. So there's your 3 upcoming speakers. And yes, today is Flag Day. So Rich said it first, but Deb followed right behind. I don't see any flag shirts on here today, though. I thought, All right. Well, with that being said, we'll conclude with the Rotary 4-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Hope you guys have a wonderful Monday and a great week. We'll see you next Monday for the next conversation with Rotary Action People. Take care, folks. That's a wrap. Bye-bye.